On the 5th of May, 1821, Napoleon Bonaparte is dead. Now let that sink in for a second. This is not just any man. This is the guy who, at his peak, controlled most of Europe, who made kings bow to him, who escaped from exile, raised an army from nothing in less than a year, and made the most powerful nations on earth panic all over again. This is Napoleon Bonaparte, arguably the most dangerous human being who had ever lived, and he is dead. At 51, weighing barely 90 pounds, in a leaking house on a tiny island so remote you cannot even find it on most maps. The same man who crossed the Alps, who survived the Egyptian desert, who walked out of a Russian winter that killed hundreds of thousands of his own soldiers. Dead. In a mold-covered bedroom, unable to even walk to the other side of the room in his final weeks. But here is the part that should stop you. 3 weeks before he dies, Napoleon picks up a pen. He knows he is not making it, so he writes his will calm, methodical, the way he did everything his entire life. He lists his possessions. He leaves instructions. And then, near the end, he writes 7 words that historians are still arguing about today. I die before my time, murdered by the English oligarchy and its assassin. Read that again. Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who spent 30 years reading people, calculating intentions, and outmaneuvering everyone who came at him, is dying in British custody on a British island surrounded by British guards, and his last written words are accusing them of killing him. So, was he right? Because 200 years later, we still do not have a clean answer. At his peak, Napoleon Bonaparte controlled an empire stretching from Spain to Poland, from the North Sea to the borders of the Ottoman Empire. He had commanded armies in over 60 battles, rewritten the legal systems of entire countries, and forced the Pope himself to travel to Paris for his coronation, then took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. The message was clear. No one gives me power. I take it. Then came the collapse. The Russian invasion of 1812 destroyed his grand army. A united coalition of European powers broke him. He was exiled to Elba in 1814, comfortable enough, but humiliating for a man who had once held a continent in his hands. Napoleon escaped from Elba within 10 months. He was back in France, marching north, his old soldiers flooding back to join him as he moved. The 100 Days. It ended at Waterloo on the 18th of June, 1815, a single catastrophic afternoon that finished him permanently. This time the British made no mistakes. Elba had been too close, too accessible. They needed somewhere from which no escape was physically possible. They chose Saint Helena, a volcanic rock 17 miles long and 6 miles wide, with no natural harbor, surrounded by sheer cliffs, located in the emptiest stretch of the South Atlantic Ocean. A Royal Navy squadron patrolled its waters permanently. Nearly 3,000 soldiers were stationed there to guard one man. Napoleon arrived in October 1815. "They have given me a place worse than a cage," he said. "It is a tomb." Longwood House was not purpose-built to be cruel. It had simply been a farm outbuilding, hastily converted into a residence for the world's most famous prisoner. The result was a damp, drafty, poorly ventilated manor sitting in the wettest, cloudiest part of the island, shrouded in mist for much of the year. The walls were always wet. Mold spread in dark patches no amount of cleaning could permanently remove. The roof leaked. The floorboards rotted. Napoleon spent his final 6 years in a building that was, by almost every measure, making him sicker. The British governor of the island, Sir Hudson Lowe, did not make things better. He restricted Napoleon's movements to a defined perimeter. He intercepted his letters. He repeatedly cut his household budget. He insisted on officers visually confirming Napoleon's presence twice daily, a humiliation Napoleon eventually refused to accept, making it a standing daily confrontation. The two men met only 5 times across 6 years. Napoleon called Lowe a prison guard masquerading as a governor. Lowe called Napoleon a security risk who needed to be contained. In this house, under this surveillance, Napoleon deteriorated. The stomach pains started, the weight dropped, his legs swelled. His personal physician, Antimarchi, a young Corsican with little experience of serious illness, was largely out of his depth. British doctors attended separately and disagreed. His medical care was fractured from the start. He died the 5th of May, 1821. Death certificate, stomach cancer. That should have been the end of the story. In 1840, France negotiated the return of Napoleon's remains. The new French government wanted him buried in Paris, in the grand tomb at Les Invalides that still stands today. A delegation traveled to Saint Helena, located the grave, and opened it. After 19 years in a tropical climate, they expected what anyone would expect: a skeleton, or close to it. Napoleon was almost perfectly preserved. His face was still recognizable. His uniform was intact. His hands were described as white and well-formed. Witnesses said it looked like he had been buried weeks ago, not 2 decades. The explanation came much later. Arsenic, the toxic element, kills the microorganisms that decompose human tissue after death. A body with elevated arsenic levels in its tissues decomposes far more slowly than a normal body, a phenomenon scientists now call arsenic mummification. Nobody made that connection in 1840, but by the 20th century, when analytical chemistry had advanced to the point where a single strand of preserved hair could be tested, scientists went to work on Napoleon. His hair contained arsenic at roughly 100 times the levels found in people alive today. 100 times. Scientists tested multiple samples from multiple sources. The result was the same every time. Enormous, historically extraordinary levels of arsenic saturating his tissues. The accusation was immediate. Napoleon had been poisoned. The poisoning theory was, on the surface, genuinely compelling. Arsenic was known in the 19th century as inheritance powder, colorless, odorless, tasteless when dissolved in food or wine. In an era before toxicology existed, there was no test for it in a living victim. Small, regular doses over months produced symptoms that looked, even to trained doctors, exactly like a wasting stomach illness, precisely how Napoleon died. The motive was not subtle. Britain had already been humiliated once by Napoleon's escape from Elba. His name still had the power to destabilize governments. Every year, he remained alive on Saint Helena. The political situation in Europe remained fragile. A quiet death from natural causes, something nobody could prove was anything other than illness, resolved everything cleanly. Napoleon himself believed it. He said it in his will. He said it to his doctors in his final weeks. He called Lowe his assassin, a man who had spent 30 years reading political situations, calculating intentions, and outmaneuvering opponents, was dying on a British island in the custody of his enemies, and he was pointing the finger directly. For decades, serious historians and scientists treated the theory as credible. The arsenic evidence was real. The motive was undeniable. The symptoms matched. The case held together. Then 2 separate findings broke it apart entirely. In the 1980s, a descendant of a family that had lived near Longwood found something tucked inside an old scrapbook, a small square of wallpaper taken as a souvenir from Napoleon's rooms in the 1820s and preserved by accident for over 150 years. When scientists analyzed it, they found arsenic embedded in the pigment. The wallpaper had been painted with Scheele's green, a brilliant, fashionable shade produced from copper arsenide. This was entirely normal for the era. Scheele's green was one of the most popular decorative colors in Europe, used in wallpaper, fabric dye, artificial flowers, and toys. Nobody yet understood what chronic exposure did to a body over time. Inside Longwood House, damp, poorly ventilated, chronically moldy, the chemistry turned lethal. Certain mold strains that thrive in exactly those wet conditions can react chemically with arsenical compounds and convert them into a volatile gas that disperses into surrounding air. Invisible, odorless, inhaled with every breath taken inside the room. Napoleon slept in those rooms. He ate in those rooms. He spent the majority of his final years breathing air that may have been slowly, invisibly saturating his body with arsenic. Not from poison in his food, not from a deliberate assassin, but from damp walls and fashionable Victorian paint. The wallpaper findings seemed to settle the question. Accidental arsenic exposure from a badly maintained house. Tragic, but no one's deliberate fault. Then, Italian scientists ran a study that broke the entire framework open again. In 2008, a team from 2 Italian universities obtained something remarkable: hair samples from Napoleon taken at 4 separate points across his entire lifetime. Not just from his death on Saint Helena, from his boyhood in Corsica, from his years as emperor, from his first exile and from his final days in 1821. They also tested hair from Napoleon's son, Napoleon II, and from Empress Josephine. The arsenic levels were identical across all samples, not elevated only at Saint Helena where the wallpaper was, where the motive was, where the British controlled his life. Elevated consistently across his entire life, back to childhood in Corsica. His son showed the same. Josephine showed the same. 3 people, different places, different decades, identical arsenic concentrations throughout. The conclusion was unavoidable. Arsenic levels that high, that consistent, across multiple unconnected people over that span of time, were not the signature of a targeted poisoning. They were the signature of an era. In the 19th century, arsenic was in medicines, tonics, cosmetics, food, and water. The levels found in Napoleon's hair were shocking by modern standards, but almost certainly normal for a person of his time and class. His hair was not evidence of murder, it was evidence of being born in 1769. So researchers went back to the original autopsy records, the actual handwritten notes from the doctors who were in that room. And what they found was not pretty for the murder theory. Napoleon's stomach was perforated. The tissue damage matched advanced ulcerating cancer, not arsenic poisoning. His weight loss in the final months was catastrophic and accelerating, exactly what late-stage cancer does to a body. And here is the detail that quietly closes the case. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, died young of the exact same disease. Stomach cancer ran in his family. Modern researchers applying today's diagnostic criteria to those 1,821 notes concluded the same thing the British doctors wrote 200 years ago. Stage 3 IA, gastric carcinoma, inherited, spreading, untreatable in 1821. The British were right. So where does that leave us? The evidence says cancer. The science says cancer. The autopsy, the family history, the clinical record, all of it points the same direction. And yet, Napoleon wrote murder in his own hand. 3 weeks before he died, the arsenic was real, whatever caused it. The autopsy happened under British supervision by men who had every reason to prefer a clean verdict. And Hudson Lowe spent 6 years making Napoleon's life deliberately miserable in ways that almost certainly accelerated whatever was already killing him. History says cancer. Napoleon said murder. 200 years later, we are still not sure which one to believe. Simple questions, surprising answers. Subscribe.